This is ZEISS Presents Full Exposure, the weekly resource for news, trends, and the people who influence the world of photography and cinematography. Hosted by veteran photographer and filmmaker Jim Kamp.
Like many DPs, Alexa Wolf came to cinematography in New York City after years working in camera, grip, and electric departments, and now serves as director of photography on narrative features and commercial projects, with a focus on supporting female and LGBTQ voices and stories. She photographed a short for the 2019 Brooklyn Film Festival, looking at how women have been marginalized in the film industry, gaining more light recently amidst the Me Too movement. First, a look at the trailer for the BFF short, The Gathering.
Then I heard you tell your story. I felt like I could tell mine.
So I shot a project recently called The Gathering. It was actually, it's really a commercial for the Brooklyn Film Festival, but their sort of theme behind the festival this year was that they were proud of the fact that they're showing films that you don't see in Hollywood. And a piece of that was that they had a huge number of films, I think it was like 60% in their feature category at least, that were directed by women. And so they had reached out to a director, Emily Elizabeth Thomas, who at the time I had never worked with, to shoot this sort of short film, almost mood piece that would play as a trailer for the festival, basically, and also before the screenings. But the idea behind it was sort of that it should be some sort of story about the struggles of women, specifically in the film industry. And Emily came up with this really amazing piece that's basically 3 women in a diner, and it feels strange because they're all in costume as kind of like classic characters. So there's an elf queen and a nun and sort of like German spy. And the diner feels very like 60s, so the one other character is this very like 60s waitress. Sort of classic characters that we all sort of recognize. But they're basically sitting there having a conversation about the roles that they didn't get and the sexual harassment or sexual assault that kept them from those roles.
When we're talking about the serious stuff, so like the back half of it? I initially was really attracted to the roles that were sort of laid out in the film because I immediately recognized them as stories that were like in the media, as stories that were talked about in the press. Do I think that there's been enough change immediately afterwards? Absolutely not. I mean, no way. There was not a single female director nominated for an Oscar this year.
This is the tip of the iceberg of a system that has just like very, very systematically marginalized women all over the world, all the time, throughout history.
The reason I decided to be part of this film, actually the reason I even decided to go to the audition, was because I felt like this is a conversation that needs to be had.
All right, let's go again.
I'll call spy action, and then she's gonna come in. Let it like marinate a little and kind of have some looks.
Action.
So although it kind of like has this sort of fantasy feeling to it, and it's kind of fun because it's sort of these crazy costumes in this retro location, it has a really important message to it. And I think I actually got connected to the project sort of randomly through a director who I hadn't actually ended up working for, but who had sort of enjoyed a conversation with me, and then the scheduling hadn't worked out, and she was a good friend of Emily's, and they were looking specifically for a female DP. And actually I get a lot of projects. I work almost primarily with female directors or LGBTQ directors, and a lot of times I think naturally that's on projects that are meaningful to those groups, which means equally meaningful to me usually, which is kind of a nice thing because I feel like I think sometimes I've talked to DPs who feel like they are often making the choice to shoot a project that maybe they don't have much like personal attachment to. And of course, like I shoot some commercial stuff and that's fine. But I think one advantage I found actually from being a female cinematographer is that I often get asked specifically for projects that have some bent towards something that like on a social or political side I actually do align with, which is kind of a nice thing.
What do you get when you combine over 125 years of camera lens heritage and the latest in autofocus technology? The ZEISS bodice. Engineered exclusively for Sony mirrorless full-frame sensor cameras, the ZEISS bodice delivers perfect corner-to-corner image quality. With enhanced protection against the elements, the ZEISS bodice is built to help you push past life's obstacles. ZEISS bodice, the perfect lens for wherever your passion leads you.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time for another edition of ZEISS Full Exposure. If you can't watch, you can always catch the audio-only version on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at ZEISS_full exposure or on the web at ZEISSfullexposure.com. And to learn more about the latest in ZEISS lenses, head to ZEISS.com.